March 18th, 1944. The wind rolled in from the eastern ridge in long, restless waves, bending the tall kunai grass and rattling the bamboo thickets like 1,000 whispered warnings. Private First Class Leon Mercer crouched behind a rotting log on the northern edge of Talon Ridge in northern New Guinea, his Springfield M1903A4 resting along the wood, his cheek pressed to the cold steel. The jungle smelled of wet soil, gun oil, and something else. Anticipation. The 32nd Infantry Division had spent weeks pushing through this miserable strip of terrain, fighting for every hill, every ravine, every narrow track the Japanese fortified with near-religious fury. But today was different. Today they weren't fighting a line. They were hunting a ghost. For the last month, Japanese forward scouts had been slipping through American perimeters, collecting intelligence and vanishing like mist. They were small teams, 1 or 2 men, silent, barefoot, carrying Type 97 sniper rifles or nothing but a machete. They moved at night, in fog, in rain, and they struck only when they were certain. That certainty had cost the Americans 17 men across multiple companies, including 2 experienced sergeants who'd served since Buna. The ridge felt haunted by their absence. Leon Mercer flicked his eyes toward the wind again. Everyone mocked him for it, the way he held a blade of grass between his fingers, feeling the direction of the breeze, the subtle shifts in humidity, the tremors in the leaves that others ignored. He'd gotten the nickname Sidewind during training because he claimed he could read a crosswind by listening to it move through tree bark. The rest of the platoon had laughed. Some still did, but Captain Horace Dunn wasn't laughing now. Not since Mercer had used that strange talent to tag a Japanese spotter at nearly 400 yards during the fighting around Sidor, a shot no one else could have made through drifting rainforest mist. But this shot, if it came, would be different, harder. The ridge stretched 600 yards across to a thin clearing, half hidden behind a broken stand of sago palms. Scouts had been moving through that clearing like ghosts for weeks. Leon had spent 2 days studying the terrain, memorizing every dark angle, every leaf cluster, each stone where a man might move. The wind here did strange things. It curled, it dropped, it whistled upward as if pulled by the ridge itself. A normal marksman wouldn't stand a chance. He exhaled slowly, letting his breath disappear into the air. Behind him, Corporal Mason Briggs muttered, "You really think he's coming?" Leon nodded. "If he's the same scout that's been running the ridge, he'll show. He always checks the clearing before nightfall. And you're going to hit a man you can barely see at 600 yards, with the wind doing somersaults." Leon didn't look away from his scope. "That's the trick." Mason snorted. "Your famous Sidewind Zero? Come on, it's a joke, Mercer." Leon didn't answer. He didn't need to. The jungle answered for him, a low gust rattling the ferns, bending them in a slow diagonal sweep from left to right, then abruptly shifting upward as it struck the warm column of air rising from the clearing. That shift was the secret. Leon had noticed it only by accident days earlier. When the wind hit the ridge at a certain angle, warm pockets rising from the clearing lifted the gust the moment it crossed the open ground. That meant the bullet would ride upward during the last 100 yards of travel. A normal shooter would compensate horizontally and vertically based on standard deviation. But Leon didn't use charts. He used sound. He used rhythm. He used the strange sense that had made him an outsider his whole life. Hours passed. The sun slipped behind the ridge. Mosquitoes thickened in the air until they sounded like static. Leon didn't move. He could wait forever. Then, just before dusk, something changed. The jungle fell silent. Not fully, but in that specific, surgical way predators create a hush without trying. Leon felt the wind flatten. His fingers tightened around the rifle. Mason straightened behind him, sensing the shift but not understanding it. Leon whispered, "He's coming." A faint outline flickered between 2 palms on the far clearing's edge. Not movement, Absence of movement. A darker shape among shadows. Leon steadied his breath. The scout moved with the unsettling grace of someone who believed he could not be seen. Bare feet, light step, head lowered to the foliage, looking for footprints or drag marks in the soil. Leon could tell immediately. This was no ordinary soldier. The Japanese sent their most skilled men as scouts, masters of concealment, of patience, of terrain. This one carried no rifle, only a pair of binoculars and a sheathed blade on his hip. Leon whispered. Range confirmed. Mason hissed back. You can't even see his chest, it's too far. Wait until he moves closer, don't risk. Leon tuned him out. He felt the wind rush along the ridge behind him, light, steady. Then it hit the clearing, and he listened, truly listened, to how it rose. A low hum, a faint lift, a curl upward at the edges like invisible fingers shaping the air. There it was, the pattern he needed. He shifted his aim 3 inches to the left, 1 inch low. Every textbook said this would miss. Every other marksman said the side wind zero trick was nonsense. But Leon trusted himself more than textbooks. The scout took 1 step forward. Leon squeezed the trigger. The rifle cracked, echoing through the jungle like a whip. The recoil pulled into his shoulder, familiar and grounding. For a moment, nothing happened. The scout froze as if confused by the sound. Then his body jerked sideways, legs folding beneath him, binoculars tumbling into the grass. He collapsed without a cry, face first, arms twitching once before going still. Mason stared at the clearing as if trying to understand the impossible. No way. That was 600 yards, Mercer. 600. Leon didn't smile. He simply chambered the next round. He wasn't going to get a second chance. Down the ridge, the jungle erupted with distant shouts, Japanese voices echoing through the trees. The scout hadn't been alone. Leon's shot had triggered a chain reaction he'd expected, but hoped to avoid. More shapes shifted through the palms. More scouts, more silhouettes. The ridge was about to become a hunting ground, and worst of all, they knew exactly where the shot had come from. Leon backed away from the log and motioned for Mason to crawl. We move now. They're coming. Hell, Mason whispered. You just shot their best ghost. Now they'll send the rest. Leon didn't reply. He didn't have to. He'd known the moment he took that shot that he was inviting a storm. The jungle wind stiffened again, curling with strange music through the bamboo. Leon listened to the wind, feeling its warnings. Night was falling, and they were not alone. Leon and Mason retreated down the slope, weaving through the wet underbrush. Branches snapped behind them, quick, soft, deliberate. Japanese scouts moving in pursuit. Leon stopped, raised a fist. Mason froze. Leon whispered, 3 of them, maybe 4. How do you always know? Leon listened to the leaves shift behind them. The wind tells me. Mason shook his head. That's not normal, Mercer. No, Leon said. But it's why we're still alive. They reached a narrow gully where the rainforest canopy opened just enough to reveal a strip of moonlight. Leon knelt, breathing slowly. He placed his rifle across his knee, watching the dark trail behind them. Minutes passed. Hours felt like seconds. The jungle held its breath. Then the first scout emerged, silent, crouched low, blade drawn. Leon adjusted his rifle, reading the wind's swirl. The air shifted left, then downward, then left again. The trick tonight wouldn't be the long shot. It would be the timing. He waited until the scout stepped into the moonbeam. He fired once. A muffled collapse. Another shape darted through the brush. Leon fired again. Missed. The round clipped a branch, sending splinters into the dark. The scout dove behind a root mass, returning a wild burst from a captured American Thompson. The fight was on. Leon motioned Mason back, pushing him toward higher ground. The scouts circled, moving like wolves among shadows. Leon steadied his rifle again, hearing the wind shift behind him. The ridge whispered its secrets, and Leon listened. The gunfire died as quickly as it had erupted, swallowed by the thick New Guinea night. Leon pressed his back against the damp slope, listening for the rustle of branches or the quiet scrape of a boot. Nothing moved except the slow drip of water from broad jungle leaves. Mason crouched behind a fallen tree, gripping his M1 like a lifeline. 2 down, Leon whispered. 1 left, maybe 2. How do you know? Mason asked again, half terrified, half in awe. Leon didn't answer. His fingers hovered above the soil, feeling the tremble of the ground through the wind's shifting breath. Most men learn to shoot by sight. Leon had learned to shoot by listening. Tonight, that might be the only thing keeping them alive. A faint disturbance in the grass to Leon's right made him turn his head. Slow, steady, no sudden motion. He raised a hand to signal Mason to freeze. A Japanese scout, narrow-faced and wrapped in a tattered camouflaged poncho, belly crawled up the slope. His blade glinted in the moonlight, reflecting only a fragment of silver. Leon waited until the wind pushed down slope. That meant sound would travel away from them, away from Mason. Slowly, he lifted his rifle and exhaled. The scout paused mid-crawl, head tilting as if he sensed something. Then Leon fired. The shot cracked through the night and the scout collapsed on his stomach, sliding half a foot down the slope. Mason blew out a breath he'd been holding for too long. "We need to move," he whispered. "If there are more—" Leon shook his head. "They won't risk more noise. Scouts don't fight open battles, they kill and melt away." "Yeah, well, they seem pretty interested in killing us." They continued down the ridge, careful not to break branches or disturb the undergrowth. Every noise felt amplified. Every gust of wind sounded like a warning. Leon felt the air pushing east now, toward their own lines. That was good. If they followed the wind's guidance, it would lead them back toward the company perimeter. But the Japanese were not finished. As Leon stepped over a thick tangle of roots, the jungle erupted in a sudden metallic snap. He froze. Mason stopped behind him. A tripwire. Leon leaned down slowly, recognizing the thin copper line tied between 2 saplings. "Mine," he whispered. "Probably Type 99 fragmentation." Mason rubbed his forehead. "They're laying traps behind us now." "They expected us to head downhill," Leon murmured. "They think we're running scared." "Are we?" "No," Leon said. "We're thinking." Carefully, he knelt and traced the wire to a rusted firing pin, housing buried beneath wet leaves. It was new, very new. Laid less than 30 minutes earlier. The Japanese had anticipated his shot, anticipated their route of escape, anticipated everything, except the wind. Leon took a deep breath and listened again. The changing gusts fluttered the leaves to his left, but the sound wasn't smooth. Something broke the flow, something subtle, something human. Leon whispered, "Someone's waiting on the left side of the ravine." Mason stiffened. "Are you sure?" Leon picked up a small pebble and tossed it lightly into the brush to their left. It bounced once, twice. A sharp intake of breath came from the darkness. Leon dropped flat as a suppressed shot hissed past his ear and buried itself in a tree trunk. Mason fired 3 rounds into the dark, but Leon grabbed his arm. "Stop! He's trying to pin us against the tripwire." "We can't stay here." Leon's mind raced. The wind shifted again, this time rising upward through the ravine. An idea surfaced. Dangerous, reckless, but it might work. "Cover your ears," Leon whispered. He turned and traced the mine's trigger housing, gently tightening the wire around a nearby root. He needed the blast to travel upward, not sideways. He needed the wind's lift to help disperse the shrapnel. It was insane, it was suicidal, but it was the only way to flush the scout without getting torn apart. Mason whispered, "What are you doing?" Leon didn't answer. He struck a match, lit a slender twig, and held it near the primer cap. The wire tightened. The metal housing rattled. He pushed Mason toward the slope. "Get down!" The mine detonated. A flash of white light tore through the ravine, followed by a deafening roar. The air itself seemed to explode, lifting leaves, branches, and a cloud of dust into the night sky. The shrapnel burst upward exactly as Leon predicted, showering the canopy with metal shards. A strangled cry echoed from the left side of the ravine, a man caught by the upward spray. Leon pushed himself to hands and knees, ears ringing. Mason lifted his head, dazed. You blew it on purpose? You would rather he blew us up? That is not the point, Mason muttered. They continued east until the jungle opened briefly into a shallow basin where moonlight pooled like silver water. Leon paused again. Something about the wind felt wrong, unpredictable, chaotic. It circled in uneven spirals, brushing his face one moment and vanishing the next. More of them, Leon whispered. Close. We should have never taken that shot, Mercer. We didn't have a choice. A low whistle drifted through the trees. Leon froze. The sound was alien, soft, rhythmic, rising and falling in precise intervals. That's a signal, Mason whispered. They're coordinating. No, Leon said. That's one scout, moving, measuring, using echoes to map the clearing. That's a thing, Leon nodded. He'd seen it once at Sidor, Japanese advanced scouts using subtle whistles to measure distance based on echo return. The technique wasn't widely known, but those who used it were almost impossible to ambush. Leon raised his rifle. Get behind me. The whistle came again, this time slightly to the right. Leon knew he had seconds. The wind curled across the basin, rising along the far slope. The scout's position was a guess, a feeling, based on how the sound bent around the leaves. That bending told him everything. Leon fired into the dark. The whistle stopped. A body tumbled from a tree, landing heavily on the ground. Mason blinked. How do you even do that? I don't know, Leon admitted. I just hear it differently. They moved again until finally the faint glow of American cigarettes floated between trees in the distance. Friendly lines. Safety. Mason exhaled in relief and waved his rifle. Hey, over here! But Leon grabbed his arm again. Don't! Not yet! The cigarette embers did not move. Something's wrong, Leon whispered. Mason's face paled. Please tell me that's not... Leon aimed his rifle at the glow. The wind shifted again, brushing his cheek from the left. The faint red glow did not flicker with breathing or hand movement. It stayed perfectly still. Decoy, Leon said. A trap. He fired. The glow shattered. Glass, not embers. A tiny lantern rigged to mimic cigarettes. The forest answered with a volley of gunfire from behind the decoy position. Leon and Mason dove behind a fallen log, bullets punching through bark and leaves above them. The Japanese had studied American habits, their routines, their comfort rituals. They used them against them. Mason shouted over the fire. We're pinned! Leon searched for the wind again. It danced across the clearing, pulling downward toward a hollow on the right. A perfect blind spot. Follow me, Leon said. You're insane! Yes. They crawled along the hollow, sliding through mud and crushed ferns until they had flanked the ambush position. Leon raised his rifle. The wind flowed horizontally now, steady and predictable. Perfect. He fired twice. 2 silhouettes fell beside the decoy lantern. Silence followed. Deep. Unsettling. Absolute. Mason wiped his face. You saved half the damn company. You know that, right? Leon didn't answer. He listened to the wind again. But this time, the wind carried something else. Footsteps. Many. Too many. American boots. Dozens of them. The rescue patrol had finally arrived. Lieutenant Avery burst through the trees with a squad of 11 men, rifles raised. Mercer! Briggs! We heard gunfire all the way from the ridge! Mason laughed shakily. About damn time. Avery looked at the bodies scattered across the clearing. All this? You too? Mason pointed at Leon. Him. I just tried not to die. Avery gave Leon a long, calculating look. Captain Dunn needs to hear about this. Leon didn't care about praise or recognition or the ridiculous name they'd given his shooting method. He cared about one thing, the wind. It still hadn't settled. It was restless, uneasy, like the jungle itself was bracing for something. Avery said, Let's get you back to camp. But Leon didn't move. The wind's warning was clear. This isn't over, he whispered. And somewhere deep in the jungle, where even moonlight refused to fall, another scout watched them, silent, unmoving, patient. A shadow Leon had not yet faced. The campfires flickered low beneath the dripping canopy as Leon sat alone on an overturned ammunition crate, the jungle wind brushing across the perimeter wire with a sound like quiet breathing. The 32nd Division had settled into an uneasy silence after the patrol returned, but word about Leon's 600-yard shot spread through the tents like wildfire. Men he hardly knew slapped his shoulder with congratulations. Others whispered the story as if it were myth. But Leon felt none of the pride they expected. Something had followed them back. He could feel it. A disturbance in the air currents, a dissonance in the rustle of leaves. The wind was never wrong. Captain Dunn approached, boots sinking slightly into the wet earth. "Mercer, you planning to get some sleep tonight?" Leon shook his head. "Something's out there, sir." Dunn sighed. "You've been saying that since Sidor." And I was right then. Dunn didn't argue. He knew better. "We'll rotate extra guards, but you need to rest. Tomorrow, we push east to secure the ridgeline. Intel says Japanese forward teams are regrouping." Leon looked into the jungle, where the darkness pressed like a living wall. "They're already here." Dunn frowned. "You saw movement?" "No," Leon said. "I felt the wind change." Dunn exhaled, half annoyed, half believing despite himself. "Get some rest, Mercer. That's an order." Leon lay down in his tent, but sleep didn't come. Every gust of air, every subtle pulse in the canvas made him sit up, eyes scanning the dark. Midnight passed. Hours crawled. His nerves hummed like stretched wire until finally, just before dawn, the wind shifted sharply east toward the heart of the camp. Leon bolted upright. A single sound followed, a twig snapping, deliberate, controlled. Leon grabbed his rifle and stormed out of the tent. The guards were awake, rifles up, scanning the perimeter. A thick fog rolled across the jungle floor, coating everything in a ghostly haze. Mason stumbled out behind him, half-dressed. "What now?" Mason mumbled. Leon raised a finger to silence him. The wind curled inland, then dropped suddenly. A change in air pressure, movement. Someone was inside the wire. He ran toward the northeast sector, heart pounding. A guard stood at the fence line, peering outward. "Thought I heard something," the man whispered. "Could be a boar." "No animal moves like that," Leon said. A shadow flitted between two trees. Then another, behind it. Leon froze. These weren't random infiltrators. They moved like a coordinated unit. Slow, silent, never stepping on dry branches. A scout team. But not ordinary scouts. Leon felt the air fold inward, as if the wind itself recoiled from something. Mason whispered, "They followed us back, didn't they?" "No," Leon said quietly. "Just one of them followed, but I think he brought more." Dunn appeared behind them with Avery and a dozen men. "Positions. Eyes front. Nobody fires unless Mercer confirms." Leon watched the wind ripple across the fog, bending in unnatural ways, avoiding a single dark shape emerging through the mist. The man stepped forward, barefoot, face painted in charcoal stripes. He wore a cloth headband marked with kanji, worn nearly to threads. His posture was rigid but unhurried. He carried a Type 97 sniper rifle across his shoulder. Leon whispered, "That's him." Mason said, "Who?" "The one who trained the others." The scout stopped 10 feet from the wire, staring directly at Leon. No fear, no anger, just cold evaluation. "He wants you," Mason said, "like some kind of duel." Leon lifted his rifle. "He wants information. He followed the wind too. He knows someone here can read it." The scout raised his hand slightly. A signal. Another shadow appeared near the trees, then another. 3 scouts now, fanning out like wolves. Dunn hissed, "Mercer, get back, now!" Leon didn't move. The wind moved around him, curling in distorted spirals that pointed toward the precise angle of danger. He could feel where each scout stepped before their feet hit the ground. One moved left, quiet as mist. Leon aimed and fired. The scout dropped instantly. The other two lunged forward. Gunfire erupted from the camp line, cracking through the fog like distant thunder. Scouts dove into the underbrush, vanishing between roots and mud. Leon sprinted forward, ignoring Dunn's shout. He reached the wire and slid beneath the lowest strand, scraping his shoulder on a jagged barb. Mason yelled, "Leon, get back here!" But Leon ran into the fog. The world dissolved into shifting white. Leon crouched low, listening. He closed his eyes, relying on the wind alone. It pressed against his right cheek, then retreated. 2 scouts remained, one directly ahead, the other circling behind him. He spun and fired. A scream tore through the fog. One scout fell, clutching his ribs. The last one, the leader, was close now. Too close. Leon felt him like a disturbance in the air, a pocket of stillness moving through a world of motion, a whisper of fabric, a breath, the faintest shuffle of bare feet. Leon dropped to the ground as a blade cut the space where his throat had been. He rolled, firing blindly upward. The scout leaped aside with impossible reflexes. His silhouette blurred through the fog, becoming less a man and more a moving shadow. He charged again, blade flashing. Leon lifted his rifle to block the strike. Steel hit steel, sparks scattering into the fog. The impact rattled down Leon's arms. The scout moved with lethal precision, each blow steady and controlled. He wasn't trying to kill quickly. He was testing Leon, probing, measuring, learning him. Leon ducked under a slash and swung the rifle butt hard into the man's ribs. The scout grunted and stumbled but didn't fall. He steadied himself and paused. For a moment the 2 men stood facing each other, still and silent except for the breathing of the jungle. The wind pulled upward. The scout moved. Leon had seen it coming before the feet shifted. The wind told him where the strike would land. He leaned sideways, raised the rifle and fired from the hip. The shot echoed through the fog. The scout staggered. He dropped the blade but did not fall at first. He stood trembling, staring at Leon with dark, unreadable eyes, eyes that revealed nothing except recognition. Recognition of a rival. Recognition of someone who saw the world as he did. The scout collapsed. Leon stood over him, breathing hard. The fog thinned. Mason ran through the trees with Dunn and Avery. Mason gasped, "Leon, Jesus, are you hit?" Leon shook his head slowly, lowering the rifle. "No." Dunn surveyed the scene. "That was their wind reader, wasn't it?" Leon nodded. Avery frowned. "Their what?" "Every army has men who sense terrain differently," Dunn said quietly. "Japan trains theirs in the mountains. They listen to air currents, just like Mercer." Leon didn't answer. He knelt beside the fallen scout, noticing a small leather pouch tied to the man's belt. Inside was a folded scrap of parchment, thin, waterproof, marked with swirling hand-drawn lines, wind currents, patterns, angles, a map of the air itself. Dunn whispered, "What is that?" Leon stared at the map. The curves were familiar, echoes of the very patterns Leon had learned by instinct. But this man had studied them, refined them, perfected them, and he had used them to kill. Leon folded the parchment and stood. He wasn't here to kill us. He was here to find the one who could read the wind like he could. Mason swallowed. "Why?" Leon tightened his grip on the parchment. Because he wanted to know if he was alone in the world. The jungle wind eased for the first time in days, shifting back into its natural rhythm. The tension broke. Birds began calling again. The fog lifted slowly. Dunn placed a hand on Leon's shoulder. "You saved this entire camp tonight." Leon didn't feel like a hero. He felt like a man who had just fought someone who understood him in a way few ever could. A man who felt the world's breath the same way he did. Avery approached. "Intel will want to see that map." Leon paused. "Yeah," he said softly, "but I want to study it first." Dunn nodded. "You earned that." As the sun rose, Leon stood alone at the edge of camp, letting the morning breeze wash across his skin. The wind no longer carried danger. It carried something else now. Respect, and the faint echo of a man he had never known, but somehow understood completely. Mason walked up beside him and whispered, "So, what now?" Leon watched the jungle breathe. "Now," he said, "we keep moving. There will be more. Scouts, snipers, maybe other men like him." "And us?" Mason asked. Leon smiled faintly. "We'll follow the wind." The breeze swept across the ridge, lifting the leaves in a long, graceful arc, an unspoken approval. Leon raised the folded parchment and let the wind tug at it, the curves on the map dancing like living things. A new battlefront. One he alone could read, and one he would survive, because the jungle spoke to him, and he had learned, better than anyone alive, to listen.